Okay, let's unpack this. If you're learning English, I think we can all agree there's this one universal hurdle. It causes more frustration, probably, than any grammar test or vocabulary list.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
It's really understanding native speakers, when they're talking naturally, at full speed.
Ah, yes. The speed problem. Absolutely.
And our sources, they all seem to agree. It's usually not that you don't know the words. It's more like an auditory processing thing.
Right. Your brain knows the word on paper, but can't catch it in the stream of sound.
Exactly. It all just blurs together like music almost. One long sound, and you're struggling to find where one word stops and the next one starts.
That's a great way to put it, the acoustic blur.
So our mission statement for this deep dive today is to tackle that blur head on. We've dug through our research stack and pulled out 10 of the absolute best, most practical tips.
Backed by evidence, too.
Backed by evidence, to help turn you, the listener, into a listening master. This is basically your custom toolkit for, rewiring your ears.
And that challenge you described, the speed, the blur, that is real-world English. It's dynamic. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, the goal isn't just memorizing words. It's about building structural knowledge,
Right.
Understanding the system.
Right, not just the bricks, but how the wall is built.
Precisely. And the underlying truth here, we found this across the board in our sources, is that getting better at listening, it isn't about catching every single word perfectly.
No.
It's more fundamental. It's about training your brain to recognize the natural rhythm, the intonation, the sound patterns of English as it's actually spoken.
Okay, so the goal for us today is pretty simple then.
Mm-hmm.
Give you 10 actionable strategies, things you can actually do, so you can understand English faster and hopefully move past that feeling of being lost or, overwhelmed in a real conversation.
We want to move you beyond just passive hearing, letting the sound just wash over you.
Right.
Towards a really powerful, active learning state, where every time you listen, you're deliberately building those new neural structures. You're actively learning.
Okay, let's dive in. We have to start with the foundation, right? We're calling this the mindset section.
Good place to start.
Because, honestly, you can have the most brilliant techniques in the world, but they're kind of useless if you don't nail down the basics first. Consistency, patience, motivation.
The bedrock.
Exactly. So we're kicking off with tip 1. Listen to every day, even for 10 minutes.
Just a minute.
Just 10 minutes. And the research doesn't just suggest this. It treats it as like the number one rule, the most fundamental thing.
Okay.
And there's this great analogy they use. Listening is like exercise for your brain. If you try these, marathon sessions, listen for 3 hours straight, but only once a month.
Yeah, that doesn't really work for building muscle, does it?
Not really. It doesn't give your neural pathways, your brain's connections, a chance to really solidify. You lose the benefit.
Right. Sporadic effort doesn't build the habit or the structure, but that specific minimum time, 10 minutes a day, that's the crucial detail, isn't it?
It seems so short, though. Why is that specific number so powerful?
Well, it taps directly into habit formation and the brain science behind it. We're aiming for what some psychologists call low-friction habit stacking.
Low friction, meaning it's easy to do, hard to skip.
Exactly. A 10-minute task. It's incredibly hard to justify not doing it. I don't have 10 minutes. Most people do. That ensures consistency.
And consistency is what drives the change.
It's what drives the real structural neurological change. When you expose your brain daily to that unique soundscape of English, the rhythm, the speed, the intonation, you're constantly stimulating something called neuroplasticity. That's the brain's amazing ability to reorganize itself, forming new connections between neurons.
So you're literally rewiring your brain day by day.
You are. By doing it daily, even for just 10 minutes, you're forcing the brain to strengthen those pathways. You're moving the processing of English sounds from the conscious analytical part of your brain.
Where you're translating word by word.
Right, to the more automatic subconscious regions.
Yeah.
Where understanding language starts to feel more like a reflex, less effortful.
So that's the takeaway. 10 minutes every day is genuinely more valuable than cramming 3 hours in once a week. Consistency beats intensity here.
Absolutely.
But let's be real. Committing to something daily, even just for 10 minutes, there will be days you feel stuck, you feel frustrated because you aren't seeing progress leap forward every single day.
That's inevitable in any learning process.
Right. And that leads us perfectly into tip 9. Be patient. Progress takes time. We're jumping ahead in the numbers a bit here, but this feels like the psychological bedrock that holds up tip 1.
It absolutely is. This is so critical for avoiding learner burnout. It's something we see a lot.
Burnout is real.
It is. And many sources, they talk about this J-curve in language learning. You often get this initial burst of quick progress, feels great.
Yeah, the honeymoon phase?
Exactly. But then it's followed by what feels like a long, frustrating plateau. Progress seems to stall, and that's where so many learners give up. They think, I'm just not getting any better.
But they are getting better, it's just harder to see.
Often, yes. The sources use that metaphor again, building muscle. It happens slowly, incrementally. Sometimes it's almost imperceptible day to day.
Right. You don't see your biceps bulge after one workout.
Precisely. So you won't hit perfect comprehension in a week or even a month. Accepting that reality, that it's a long game, that's actually part of the process.
So what's the strategy then? How do you stay motivated during that plateau?
You have to shift your focus. Look for the smaller, maybe qualitative improvements. Not just, did I understand everything, but okay, today I only got the gist, but maybe I really nailed the speaker's tone. Or, hey, I recognize that idiom they use.
Ah, so celebrating the small wins.
Exactly. It's about proactive expectation management. Don't beat yourself up over the 40% you missed. Focus on the fact that today you understood 50%, and maybe tomorrow, just by showing up again for those 10 minutes, you'll naturally catch a little more, maybe hit 60%.
That reframing, focusing on the positive change, however small, that keeps the momentum going.
It keeps you in the game during those inevitable flat periods.
Okay, so we need daily practice, and we need patience. But how do we make sure the daily practice doesn't start feeling like, well, like a chore, something you dread?
The motivation piece. This brings us to the final part of our foundation. Tip 10, make it fun.
This sounds nice, but is it really a requirement?
Our sources treat it that way, actually. It's not just a nice to have. It's presented as a structural requirement for sticking with it long term.
Why is that?
Think about it. The moment listening to English feels like homework, like a burden, your brain instinctively starts to resist. You build up negative associations.
Okay, that makes sense. You avoid things you don't enjoy.
And conversely, the brain learns much faster, much more effectively when it feels rewarded. When you choose content you genuinely find enjoyable. Maybe it's stand-up comedy that makes you laugh, or a fascinating podcast interview, or music you love.
Or even just a TV show you're into.
Right, you're subconsciously tapping into the brain's reward system. Dopamine gets released. And that dopamine reinforces the learning behavior. It basically tells your brain, hey, this is good, keep doing this.
So forcing yourself to listen to, I don't know, dry academic lectures you couldn't care less about, that's actually counterproductive.
It can be. You're creating negative feedback loops. But if you're laughing along with an episode of, say, Modern Family, or you're totally absorbed in a true crime podcast in English...
You're learning almost by accident because you're enjoying it.
Exactly. You're layering positive emotions onto the learning process. And think about it, if it's fun, what happens?
You're more likely to actually do it every day. You'll hit that 10-minute minimum without even trying.
Bingo. Tip 10 feeds directly back into tip 1. Fun ensures consistency.
That's the psychological payoff then. Motivation fuels consistency, and consistency is what drives that neurological change we talked about.
That's the foundation. Daily, patient, and fun.
Right. So, mindset is locked down. We know how to approach this mentally. Now, we need to tackle the big question of what exactly we should be listening to.
The input, yes. Crucial.
Because you could listen every day, patiently, having fun.
Yeah.
But if the material itself is wrong for you, you might just end up frustrating yourself even faster.
Good point. You need the right challenge level.
Which brings us neatly to tip 2. Choose the right material. And the key idea here, according to our sources, is finding that Goldilocks zone, the sweet spot.
Not too hard, not too easy.
Exactly. How do you find that?
Well, this pulls in some learning theory, pedagogical theory. You want material that's just a little bit above your current understanding. Not miles above, but just enough to stretch you.
Okay.
There's this concept from Stephen Krashen, a linguist, called the input hypothesis. Specifically the idea of I+1.
I+1, what does that mean?
I is your current level of competence, your current understanding. And +1 is that next little step up, the next level of challenge.
Okay, so you need something slightly harder than what you already know.
Right, because if the material is way too difficult, let's say I+5, what happens?
You just get lost. It sounds like noise. You give up.
Your brain shuts down, basically. It can't find meaning, so it tunes out. You lose motivation fast. But what if it's too easy? Just I.
Then you're not learning anything new. You're comfortable, but you're not improving.
Exactly. No challenge means no growth, no acquisition.
So how do you know if you're in that sweet spot, that I+1 zone? Is there a rule of thumb?
A good guideline is if you can understand maybe 70 to 80% of the material without needing to constantly pause or look things up. You get the main idea, most of the details, but there are still a few new words or structures that make you think a little.
Okay, 70, 80%, that feels achievable. What kind of material fits that?
Well, a great starting point, especially if you need a bit of support, is using things like English podcasts designed for learners or maybe YouTube talk shows that explicitly offer subtitles or transcripts.
Ah, so you have a safety net.
Exactly. You can push yourself with the audio first, grapple with that I+1 challenge, but you can always check the text if you really hit a wall. It builds confidence.
Okay, that makes sense for difficulty level. But what about the type of English? I mean, our listener, they're probably past the super slow artificial dialogues you get in beginner textbooks.
Hopefully. If you want to understand real people, you need to move beyond that textbook English fast.
Which leads us straight into tip 3, focus on real English. This feels like a big one. A reality check.
It really is. Textbooks, look, they serve a purpose for introducing grammar, basic structures, but they are terrible, absolutely terrible, at showing you how native speakers actually sound.
They sound too perfect, too clean.
Way too clean. They lack the natural rhythm, the ups and downs, the intonation, and critically, they miss the way speech gets compressed, squashed together.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting, I think. This explains why listening is so hard sometimes. You mentioned compression.
Yes. Native speakers, we rely heavily on things like reductions, linking sounds together, and contractions, stuff that textbooks often ignore or just mention briefly.
Can you give an example?
Sure. A textbook might carefully say, I am going to go to the library, each word separate.
Right, very clear.
But in real life, you're much more likely to hear, I'm gonna go the library.
Whoa, okay, that's a big difference. Gonna, go the.
Exactly. Going to becomes gonna. Goes the gets linked and reduced to something like go to the. If your ear is only trained on that slow, separate word version,
you're completely lost when you hear the natural version. You might not even recognize the words going to.
Precisely. You're listening for sounds that just aren't there in fast speech.
So the solution is obvious then. We need to actively seek out listening material where people talk like that. Naturally, quickly, idiomatically.
Absolutely. Authentic listening environments. Our sources strongly recommend things like unscripted interviews. Podcasts are great for this. Personal vlogs can be good too.
Real conversation.
Real conversations. And interestingly, they also often mention specific types of TV shows, especially situational comedies.
Sitcoms,
like Friends or The Office. Why those specifically? Think about the dialogue in those shows. It's usually very fast-paced, right?
Yeah, lots of quick back and forth banter.
And it's packed with natural, idiomatic language, slang, expressions. Plus, the humor often depends not just on what they say, but how they say it. The timing, the intonation, the little sarcastic tones.
Ah, so watching those forces you to pay attention to the whole package.
Yeah.
The words, the sounds, the context, the emotion, not just translating isolated vocabulary.
Exactly. It immerses you in the flow of real, dynamic speech patterns. It's excellent practice.
Okay, real English makes sense. And speaking of real English, we have to acknowledge that English isn't just one thing, is it? It's spoken all over the world.
A huge point. Which brings us to tip 7. Explore different accents.
Right. You can't just stick to, say, standard American or standard British, even though they might be the most common ones you hear in movies or global news.
You really can't. Not if you want to function effectively in English globally. English is a world language. The phonetic variety is just incredible. You have to be ready for that diversity.
So this means actively seeking out speakers with different accents. Australian, Canadian,
Indian, South African, Irish, Scottish. The list goes on and on. You need exposure.
Now, what's fascinating here, you mentioned this before we started recording, learners often see this huge variety of accents as, like, a problem, another hurdle.
They do. They think, oh, great, just when I start understanding Americans, now I have to deal with Australians. It feels overwhelming.
But the sources argue the opposite.
Yeah.
That this diversity is actually an asset.
Yes. That's the really interesting insight. By intentionally exposing yourself to all these different sound patterns, different rhythms, different ways of pronouncing vowels, different stress patterns, sometimes even different common words.
What does that do for your brain?
It builds what you could call acoustic flexibility. You're training your brain not to latch onto just one single predictable way that English should sound.
Ah, okay.
Instead, you're teaching it to recognize the underlying structure of the language, the grammar, the core meaning, regardless of the speaker's specific pronunciation. You start hearing the English through the accent, rather than being blocked by the accent.
That's a really powerful shift in perspective. You move from recognizing just one voice to recognizing the language itself.
That's the goal. You become a more robust, adaptable listener.
That's a fantastic point.
Yeah.
But practically speaking, does the research suggest, should you try to master one accent first before diversifying? Or just jump into the deep end with all the accents at once?
That's a good question. There's a little caution in our notes about that. The general advice seems to be, maybe start with the accent you encounter most often, or the one you need most urgently. Perhaps that's North American English if you watch a lot of US TV shows or work with Americans.
Okay, build a foundation first.
Build some initial confidence and competence with one major accent. But, and this is important, don't wait too long to start diversifying.
Why not?
Because if you only listen to one accent for a very long time, your brain can kind of ossify. It gets too rigid in its expectations. Then, when you suddenly encounter a new accent later on, it becomes much, much harder to adapt. Your brain resists it.
So get comfortable with one, then actively, aggressively seek out variety fairly early on.
That seems to be the best strategy for long-term flexibility.
Okay, fantastic. So we've covered the mindset daily, patient, fun. We've talked about choosing the right material, I+1 difficulty, real English, diverse accents.
Got the foundation, got the input.
Now we shift gears into the action phase. How do you actually engage with this material? How do you stop just hearing English and start actively learning from it?
Turning passive into active. This is where the real work happens.
And we kick this section off with a critical idea. Tip 4, use active listening. This sounds simple, but it's more than just paying attention, isn't it?
Oh, much more. You can't just let the words flow into one ear and out the other, even if you're technically paying attention. If you want mastery, you need real engagement. Mental and even physical.
Okay, so what does that active engagement look like in practice? What are the specific actions?
It means things like focusing really intently. It means pausing the audio frequently, maybe hitting rewind a few times if you miss something.
Okay.
It means actively repeating words or phrases out loud that you hear, trying to mimic the sound. And it definitely involves interacting with the content somehow, like physically writing down new vocabulary words you encounter, or maybe noting down an interesting sentence structure you want to remember.
So these little actions, pausing, repeating, writing, they help solidify the input.
Exactly. They move it from just fleeting sounds in your short-term memory into something more concrete that can be processed and potentially stored in long-term memory. It forces deeper processing.
Got it. But there's one technique under this active listening umbrella that our sources consistently highlighted as being particularly powerful, almost like a secret weapon.
Ah, yes. You must be talking about shadowing.
Shadowing. Let's unpack that. It's not just repeating after the speaker, right? It's more involved than that.
It is. Shadowing is about simultaneous repetition, or almost simultaneous.
Okay, explain the process. How does someone actually do shadowing?
Right. Basically, you try to repeat what the native speaker is saying as they are saying it. You're aiming to match their speed, their rhythm, their intonation as closely as you possibly can in real time.
Wow, okay, so you're talking at the same time as the recording, like an echo.
Pretty much. Imagine you're like a linguistic parrot, but you're only about, say, a quarter of a second behind the original speaker. You're constantly chasing their voice.
That sounds challenging. What are the steps to get started?
It does take practice and discipline for sure. The recommended steps are usually something like this. First, just listen to the segment once for overall understanding, get the gist.
Okay.
Second, listen again, but this time focus only on the sounds, the rhythm, the melody of the speech. Don't even worry about the meaning for this step. Just hear the music.
Interesting. Tune out the meaning, tune into the sound.
Exactly. Third, try shadowing just a very short chunk, maybe 5 seconds, 10 seconds max. Pause the audio, repeat that chunk, trying to match the sound precisely. Do it a few times until it feels closer.
Start small.
Start small. Then finally, once you're comfortable with short bits, try to shadow longer stretches, maybe 30 seconds or a minute, really pushing yourself to keep up with the speaker's natural pace.
Okay, I can see how that would be a serious workout. What makes it so powerful, though? Why is this better than just repeating afterwards?
The power is that it trains your mouth and your ears together simultaneously. Your listening comprehension system gets reinforced by the physical act of speaking your articulation muscles.
Ah, the physical connection.
Yes. It makes the whole process of language, both understanding it and producing it, feel more automatic, more ingrained. You're not just learning the sounds intellectually, you're learning the rhythm and the stress patterns in your muscles. It makes the input start to sound more natural to your own brain because you're physically producing it too.
That's fascinating. Training the mouth helps the ears.
It's a very potent combination for fluency.
Okay, shadowing gives us the mechanics for deep engagement, but we also need to make sure our mental focus is sharp during any listening practice, which connects really well to our next tip. Tip 6, listen with purpose.
Right. Active listening isn't just about doing things like shadowing, it's also about having a clear goal for why you're listening in the first place. Otherwise, your brain is just kind of drifting, aimlessly absorbing.
So before you even press play on that podcast or video.
Exactly. Before you hit play, you need a pre-listening strategy. It should be a conscious choice. Ask yourself, okay, what am I trying to get out of this specific 15-minute session?
And what kinds of goals could you set? The sources must give examples.
They do. You can categorize your purpose. For instance, is your goal just to understand the main idea? Get the big picture of the interview or the story. That's a high-level comprehension goal.
Okay, just the gist.
Or maybe your goal is much more specific. I'm going to focus only on catching and writing down 5 new vocabulary words or idioms I hear. That's a detail-oriented goal.
Hunting for treasure.
Kind of. Or maybe your goal is purely linguistic. Today, I'm going to focus entirely on the speaker's accent. I want to notice how they pronounce their sounds, or I'm listening for examples of rising intonation at the end of statements. That's focusing on specific linguistic features.
I see. So having that specific target helps direct your attention.
Tremendously. When your brain knows what it's listening for, it shifts gear. It goes from that passive absorption mode, just taking in whatever washes over it, into active, targeted learning. Purpose acts like an intellectual filter. It directs your focus, making sure that 10 or 15-minute session is used as effectively as possible.
Maximizing your learning time.
That's the idea.
All right. Now, let's bring in the modern world. We don't have to do all this just with our ears and a notebook, right? Technology can help.
Oh, absolutely. Technology is a massive asset here. Which brings us to tip 5. Use technology smartly. It's not an optional extra anymore. It's pretty much essential for efficient listening practice.
So what's the main way tech helps?
Probably the single most useful feature, the one you should definitely be using, is the ability to control the playback speed.
Slowing things down.
Yes. Most podcast players, YouTube, other video platforms, they have built-in controls to slow down the audio or video without making it sound too distorted. Usually 0.75x speed, maybe 0.9x.
And how does that connect back to what we said earlier?
It connects directly to that I+1 concept. Remember, you need material that's just slightly challenging.
Right.
Well, maybe native speed is currently I+3 for you, just too fast, too overwhelming. But if you slow it down to 0.75x speed, suddenly it might become I+1. Manageable, but still challenging.
So speed control lets you fine-tune the difficulty level of any material.
Precisely. You can listen at 0.75x first. This lets your ears catch those tricky connected sounds, the reductions we talked about, that are just invisible at full speed. Then, as you get comfortable, you nudge it up to 0.9x. And eventually, you work your way back up to 1x, native speed. Technology gives you that precise, granular control.
That's incredibly useful. What other tech tools did the sources mention?
They also highlighted specific apps designed for language learning that can act like personalized coaches. Tools that offer immediate feedback.
Like what?
Well, things like Elsa Speak were mentioned. It uses AI to analyze your pronunciation and intonation and gives you feedback on how to improve. That ties directly back to practicing the sounds you hear, maybe even for shadowing.
Okay, so pronunciation feedback.
Yes. And also resources like the vast library of TED Talks. They're great because they cover tons of topics, feature diverse speakers, and crucially, usually offer accurate transcripts in many, many languages.
Transcripts, we're coming to those.
Yeah.
So TED Talks let you read along or check your understanding easily.
Exactly. So overall, technology is like your flexible friend here. It helps you listen repeatedly, slow things down, get feedback, record yourself maybe, compare yourself to the native speaker. It makes the whole learning process much more efficient, scalable, and personalized.
Definitely sounds like a smart way to practice. Okay, we've saved maybe the most technical, but also potentially the most powerful technique for last, because this one directly tackles that acoustic blur we started with. The feeling that words just blend together.
Yes, this is about peeling back the layers of sound.
It's tip 8. Use transcripts and subtitles strategically. The key word being strategically.
Absolutely crucial. It's not just about turning on the subtitles and reading along passively. That can actually hinder your listening development if you rely on it too much.
Right. Your brain gets lazy and just reads instead of listening.
Exactly. So the method prescribed by our sources, the strategic way, is a very specific 2-step process.
Okay, what are the 2 steps?
Step 1, you must listen first without any text. No subtitles, no transcript, just pure audio.
Force your brain to wrestle with the sound alone.
Yes. Force it to use context, intonation, prior knowledge, all its resources to try and decode the meaning from the sound. That's the necessary challenge, the I+1 workout for your ears.
Okay, listen first, audio only. Then what?
Then, and only then, step 2. Listen again, but this time with the subtitles or the transcript visible.
Okay. And what's the goal of this second listen and read pass?
This is the crucial comparison phase. You are actively comparing what your brain thought it heard in step 1, that potentially blurred, confusing sound, with what was actually said, written out clearly on the screen or page.
So you're spotting the differences. Where did my brain get tripped up?
Precisely. And this comparison, this noticing the gap between the sound and the text, is an incredibly targeted way to train your ears to recognize connected speech.
Connected speech. That's the technical term for words blending together.
Yes. This is where the magic happens. This is how you demystify that music of English we talked about. You start understanding the subconscious phonological rules that native speakers use to make speech flow smoothly and quickly.
You mentioned gonna and wanna earlier.
Yeah.
Those are common examples. But can you break down some of the other, maybe deeper level sound changes that happen in connected speech, the things that really confuse learners?
Absolutely. There are several key processes. One is called elision. That's where a sound is basically dropped or deleted to make pronunciation easier or faster.
Dropped entirely. Like what?
A classic example is fish and chips. Very often it's pronounced fish and chips. The D sound in and just disappears. Or next door might become next door, losing the T.
Okay, elision dropping sounds. What else?
Another big one is assimilation. This is where a sound changes to become more like a neighboring sound. It adapts.
How does that work?
Think about the phrase 10 pounds. Often in rapid speech, it sounds more like 10 pounds. Why? Because the N sound at the end of 10 is made with the tongue behind the teeth, but the next sound, P, is made with the lips. So the N sound changes to an M sound, also made with the lips to make the transition smoother. N assimilates to the place of articulation of P.
Wow, okay. That's subtle, but definitely could throw you off if you're listening for a clear N sound. 10 pounds.
It definitely can. And then particularly in non-erotic accents like standard British English, you get things like the linking R or the intrusive R.
Linking R.
Yeah, where an R sound is inserted between words to smooth the transition, even if there's no R in the spelling of the first word. Like the idea of might sound like the idea of.
An R appears out of nowhere.
Effectively, yes, to link the vowel sounds. These kinds of changes, elision, assimilation, linking, they are completely invisible if you only look at the dictionary spelling of words.
But they become instantly clear when you do that comparison. Listen first, hear the blur, then listen with the transcript, see the actual word.
Exactly. When you see going to written down, but you remember hearing gonna, the puzzle clicks into place. You realize, they didn't skip words, they compressed the sounds according to these natural rules.
That process, that comparison, actively teaches your brain to expect and recognize these patterns in real fast speech. It normalizes them.
It teaches your brain the phonological reality, the actual physics of fluent English speech. It's moving beyond just vocabulary to understanding the sound mechanics, a very powerful technique.
Fantastic. Okay, that's a lot of grounds we've covered, 10 really practical tips. Let's try and quickly recap the main pillars, the big takeaways from our discussion today, to give everyone a clear roadmap.
Good idea. A quick summary.
Right. So pillar number 1 was the mindset. This was about the foundation.
Consistency first.
Be consistent. Commit to that 10-minute daily minimum like it's non-negotiable. Practice patience, especially during those inevitable plateaus. Remember the J-curve.
And make it fun. Choose stuff you enjoy. That fuels the consistency.
Exactly. Mindset. Consistent, patient, fun. Pillar 2 was about material selection, what you actually listen to.
And input, yeah. Choose the right level, that Goldilocks zone, I+1. Not too hard, not too easy.
And focus fiercely on real, authentic English. The stuff with contractions, slang, connected speech, not just textbook dialogues.
And crucially, expose yourself intentionally to diverse global accents. Build that acoustic flexibility. Don't get stuck on just one.
Right, material, right level, real diverse. And finally, Peter 3 was the action, how you engage with the material.
Turning listening into learning. Use active listening techniques. Pause, repeat, take notes.
And definitely try that advanced technique, shadowing. Train your mouth and ears together by repeating simultaneously.
Listen with a defined purpose each time. Know what you're listening for. Main idea. Vocab. Accent features.
Leverage technology smartly. Use speed controls, use helpful apps, use online resources like TED Talks.
And finally, use transcripts and subtitles strategically. That two-step method. Listen first without text, then listen again with text to compare and analyze connected speech.
Perfect. Mindset, material, action. That seems to cover all 10 tips. And the central theme, weaving through all of this, it really seems to be. Improving your listening isn't about chasing some impossible standard of dictionary perfection.
Not at all.
It's about building a functional, resilient connection with how English is actually used in real, messy, dynamic communication.
It's about understanding communication, not just isolated words.
And the more you immerse yourself, the more you expose your ears to English in all its forms, fast, slow, clear, blended, accented, the more natural and automatic it will become.
Exposure is key. Consistent, varied exposure.
So our encouragement to you, the listener, is simple. Start today. Right now even. Put on some headphones, pick something you think you'll enjoy, maybe a short interview, a song, a clip from a show, and just press play. Make English a non-negotiable part of your daily soundscape.
The progress really does begin the moment you start listening actively.
Absolutely.
So if we pull back one last time,
Yeah.
what does all this really mean, especially for maybe the more advanced learner? We ended on that idea of recognizing connected speech, understanding the mechanics of how sounds drop or change, like elision and assimilation.
About a 10 pounds example.
Exactly. Once your ear, and crucially your brain, starts to truly recognize that native speech isn't just sloppy, but is actually systematically simplified or compressed for rhythm and speed. Well, that fundamentally changes how you process all spoken information, not just English, potentially. You start to realize that maybe native speakers across languages often prioritize communicative flow, rhythm, and efficiency over perfect, slow, dictionary-style articulation. It's about getting the message across effectively within a certain cadence.
Okay, so the general principle of spoken language, man.
Perhaps, and this raises a really interesting question for you to take forward in your learning journey. Are you still primarily listening for those ideal, separate, grammatically perfect sound units you learned from a textbook? Or have you started to make the shift? Have you started listening for the actual, compressed, flowing communicative patterns that native speakers use every single day to connect with each other?
That shift in perception.
Yeah.
Moving from listening for correctness to listening for communication.
That shift, I think, is the final doorway to true auditory mastery. It's about understanding the reality, not just the ideal. And you now have the tools, these 10 tips, to help you walk through that door. You have the tools to shift from just hearing sounds to truly understanding communication.